Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I have a review of the Micador for Artists watercolors. Micador for Artists is a brand out of Australia, and they are affiliated with the koh-i-noor company, which you've probably used their colored pencils before. And this line of products is designed as a more of a higher end art product versus a student product or a kid's product. So you've probably seen similar sets to this with a black case. Those would be the koh-i-noor watercolor discs. They're less expensive, and I've seen them in craft stores in America. I've never seen these before, so when the company reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in trying out their watercolors and reviewing them, I was intrigued. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really have high hopes right off the bat, but I had seen some work that other artists had done with them, and I was curious. I was really curious. So I've done a few pieces of artwork, and we're going to get to that in a second, but first I want to get to the different working properties and how these differ from other paints that I have and paints that you might have as well. So I started off doing a basic swatch. Now generally when I'm swatching my watercolors, I do a gradiated wash. I found doing a gradiated wash to be very difficult with these watercolors. In fact, they reminded me of ink more than anything. So after, because generally I would wet a square, then I would add the color to the top and let it kind of gradiate down, so I have kind of an ombre swatch. But these, it would just fill the area right up and give you a really flat, even wash. So I was like, well, that's interesting. After trying a couple of different versions, like, it doesn't want to do that like regular watercolors would. That's kind of interesting, but I was getting such a nice flat, clean wash that I figured, well, I'm just going to swatch them all out with one layer, and then I'll do a glazing layer later. Before I swatched, I used a permanent pen. I just used one of these Micron pens that were waterproof. They're not an alcohol base, but they are a waterproof, kind of like, I guess, India ink or something, a waterproof, alcohol marker proof pens. And I used the brush pen to do a thick line, and then I also labeled each disc so I'd be able to know what I was swatching out, because there's no like labeling on the discs themselves that I can tell. I don't see any numbering or anything. The other thing that I did actually before I even swatched that was I took my I took a little circle die and I just die cut little circles of watercolor paper, and I swatched out the colors and just stuck it in a little cavity in the center. That way I would know what colors I had, because I mean, you can't tell. They look black because they're so transparent. You can't really tell what you have unless you swatch it out, and that could be disastrous if you think you're getting like a black ink and you turn out with like a bright green or a bright blue or bright purple ink or paint. I want to call these inks because they act so much like inks. So I made a little swatch in each one of them, and if it gets too grimy and I have to redo it, like the pearl paint, I've got a little drop of that over the brown. If I have to make another one, that's not a big deal. So that would be my first thing I would recommend to do if you get these paints. So the paints come in sets of 12, and a set of 12 would be 2 discs, and that's $18. A set of 24 is $36. A set of 36, which is what I have here, what I just unscrewed and laid out, that's $54. And they also have these seasons set, which are $9 each. So basically, no matter how you slice it, each disc costs you $9. The neat thing about the seasons sets is that they each have their own lid. So if you just want to take one set and go, you totally could. My favorite is the summer set because you get such bright, clean colors. You can do a lot of mixing. I actually swatched each of the summer colors here and then just did the mixing in between, and then mixed them together and made a gorgeous warm brown. So it's a really nice solution if you just want one little kit to try out, see if you like it before investing in something larger. Something that I noticed is that the different sets are arranged differently color-wise, so you're not necessarily going to get every color by getting the 36 set. I noticed there were 2 colors in the season sets that are not in the 36 set. This is violet, which is in the winter set, and this red that's in the autumn set are not in the regular set. I thought they might just be called something different, but no, those 2 colors aren't the same, and that's not the same. It's pretty close to that one, but it doesn't seem to be exactly the same. Anyway, there you have it. And it looked like on the 12 set there was a color called walnut that isn't anywhere else in the sets. So just kind of keep that in mind. But I think there's enough colors that it's not really a detractor, you know. It's probably like a mixture of two other colors or something, I don't know. But anyway, so it's not like the bigger set's going to have everything. Just want to say that because I know complete set syndrome, it can be annoying to think you have all the colors and then you don't. I think you have plenty of colors here, but just wanted to note it. So on my swatch, like I mentioned, I did a rectangle of each color on its own, diluted with water. And then I let it dry overnight. Then I came back and I did a glaze of that same color, just a little bit more concentrated over it. These glaze really well. You can keep layering and layering with these, and they are probably the most transparent watercolors I have. I don't know if they're really watercolors. They definitely feel like an ink. They almost remind me of what I wish Inktense blocks were, because when I got the blocks, and I don't have the Inktense, I didn't buy the Inktense like in the pans because I was kind of disappointed with the blocks. They were never as transparent as the pencils, I didn't find, and they're always just a little bit chalky. There is no chalkiness here, which really surprised me because I thought for sure there was going to be some chalkiness, or I thought, because I was like looking at this thinking they look so much like those kids' watercolors that I've seen before. I thought they were going to lift right up and be chalky, but no, they're actually pretty tough to lift, so it makes them really good for glazing. On each corner, I used a scrubber, a pretty stiff scrubby brush. I used one of these right here, these Menta scrubbers, to scrub up the color, and they all stained a bit. Nothing came up all the way cleanly. The only opaque colors are white, pearl, and the gray looks like, when I did the glaze, it looks like it's got a little bit of haze there. I don't see it on the regular swatch, but it's such a weak color that it's not really one that I would really, that I'll probably really use very often. And the light pink is pretty. I was actually surprised at how strong the glaze looked on there. But even that light pink, which you'd think would be full of filler and chalky, or the peach, it's not chalky. It's kind of amazing. But yeah, I had a lot of trouble trying to lift off any of these colors. I did it in the corner of each one just to see. So they're going to be really good for layering up if you like to do a lot of layering. The other thing I wanted to try was salt. So what I did was I just kind of took some random colors and painted them out. And while they were still really wet, like seconds after I painted them out, pretty much I sprinkled on the salt. Because I had a feeling that maybe the salt effect wouldn't work very well because they seem so inky and they stained the paper so quickly. I didn't get the burst of white salt, like look that I would get if I had like, say, ultramarine blue traditional watercolor and like on a background wash. I didn't get that really bright white burst where I'd have the salt, but I did get a really cool texture, and I really like the effect that I got there. So it is responsive to salt. You're just not going to get that bright white color. So it's interesting. These three swatches, I just took three colors at not really at random. Like this one, I kind of wanted to go with a fashion palette. This one, I went with a warm palette, and this one I went with a cool palette just to see what I would get for color mixing. And the mixing was satisfactory. You have enough colors, you don't really have to mix that much if you don't want to. Generally, I think I'd probably be tempted to take just one of these little discs and, you know, bring a black pen with me and work. And they are super transparent. I was so impressed with that. I probably wouldn't use these as regular watercolors though because, well, for a couple of reasons, and I'll get into that in a second. And the other thing I want to mention, and this is one of the reasons, is I doubt they're light fast because they're so vibrant and they're so transparent. I feel like they must be like a dye because there's no like residue of pigment on top of the paper anywhere. I would assume they're a dye. If anybody knows of any light fast testing on this, please let me know. I live in Maine and I can't do a decent light fast test here. I mean, we all have vitamin D deficiencies up here because we don't have enough sun, so I can't do a light fast test with any, you know, with any authority because we just don't have that bright sun that you do in other parts of the world. So you can see gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous colors. So last week, if you watched, well, probably a couple weeks ago, but by the time this goes up, this cornucopia painting I did this with those watercolors, and it was the first time I used them. I hadn't swatched them out or anything, so I did end up with some surprise colors here and there. They stain the paper pretty quickly. There was no like lifting up anything. Once you put it down, it was there. I was working wet into wet, and I really didn't know what to think about these paints. I was really on the fence. They weren't behaving like watercolors. They were behaving like ink. But, you know, it was fun. I did some colored pencils over it, and I enjoyed the process. So, really saturated color. After that, after I was doing all my swatches here, because I was trying to think, because you're always trying to figure out when you're reviewing products, what makes this different from anything else I already have? Or is this just the same old, just in a different package? That's what I'm always dealing with. And these weren't striking me as something that I've already used, other than ink in a bottle. So I decided I would just start playing with just doing some brush strokes. And I just did some brush stroke flowers, and I wasn't loving it. I was like, you know, there's no depth and texture and character with these. I was just really unhappy with my results, but I wasn't ready to give up because I felt like there was something kind of special about these and kind of unique and different, and I knew there was a use for them somewhere. So then I took some of my waterproof pens and I sketched out this sushi scene, and just did a really light sketch, and then with a fine marker, and then I started painting it in, and I just loved it. I think that is the use for these watercolors. If you like to do ink and wash, like you want to do a pen and ink picture with like a waterproof pen and then do colored wash, these are the paints for you. That I think is what these excel at. I think if you're buying these thinking that I need some watercolors, I want to get started in watercolors, I'm going to take these. I think that these might, trying to do some techniques of traditional watercolors, these might frustrate you. But if you're doing Inktober, or you are somebody that loves to do pen sketches, these are going to be perfect for the washes, because you can layer and layer and layer until the cows come home, until you're done layering, and create the depth of color you want without lifting up what's underneath. The white watercolor actually is quite opaque. I highlighted with the white here over that piece of fish to get that highlight there. It worked really well, and I think that's really the best use for it. I absolutely love the way this sketch came out, and once I did this, I was like, that's what they're for. Or I don't know what the makers of the paints would say they're for, but to me, that's what they're for. Use them with pen and ink, and they will just give you gorgeous results. I could see totally keeping the little summer one here in my travel bag that I keep in my car, in the little console that's got like a waterproof pen and some watercolor scraps. This would just be so easy to take, and I could mix everything from it. So if you want to try these out, these, as far as I know, they're only sold out of Australia, out of the Micador company. If you want to check that out, I'll link that down below. And if you're on the fence whether you want a full array like this, because that's a lot of colors, and if you, in the season sets, there's only 2 colors. Like if you bought all 4 of these season sets and then decided that you also wanted to get the set of 36, all but 2 colors that are in these season sets are in that set of 36. So just want to put that out there. If you're going to get the set of 36, I'd probably say don't bother with the seasons unless you just wanted one as a travel palette. These individual ones, the seasons, the 6 color sets, are $9. And they each have a lid, but you could take off the lids and you could screw them all together. You could stack all these up and screw them together if you want. They've got little threads in there. I recommend letting them dry out before you put them together, because I think the ink or watercolor, whatever you want to call that pigment, expands a bit. So sometimes you'll get ink on the disc above if you don't. And I highly recommend doing a little swatch. Now the material that the plastic that this is made out of is matte, and you could actually, you know, be a little sloppy when you paint, and the paint would get on the outside around the pans, and you'd have a decent idea of what the color was just from that if you wanted to. But I definitely still would recommend doing a swatch. These, oh, that's another thing I did want to mention. If you're somebody that likes to be extra pristine with your work and you don't want anything to be messy, these might not be the thing for you, because it's really easy to get paint on the outsides, especially if you're using a large brush. Something else I wanted to talk about here was their brushes. I noticed when they asked me if I wanted to review these paints, they had a line of brushes that caught my eye because they're synthetic, but they're a synthetic fur. So I'm always in the lookout for a good synthetic quill or any synthetic fur brushes, because I don't like to purchase, I haven't bought a fur brush in probably 20 years, and I really like to find these alternatives that will work just as well. And of course I still have the old brushes in my collection because they do work beautifully, but there have been brushes now that really mimic the real fur. And if you are living in Australia, or they do ship worldwide for a flat fee, so if you're in a country where you can't get the mimic brushes that I'm always recommending, because they're sold from Jerry's Autorama in the United States, if you can't get those, I discovered that these are so very similar. The color was different, and I thought, well, it looks like a golden taklon brush. It's going to be more snappy. It's not going to be as absorbent. But I would say no, these are about the same. Especially after you wash the sizing out and you've used them a couple times, they have the softness of the mimic faux squirrel brush. Even though they say they're a faux sable, they are a little softer and a little more absorbent, so they definitely would be a good choice. They're not as inexpensive as the Mimic brushes, but if you are, you know, outside of the United States, you're probably going to be cheaper for you than trying to import the Mimic brushes. So I wanted to mention that because they do have big, juicy, honkin' quills, and their brushes start around $7, I think, and go up from there. So the bigger ones do get a little pricey, but they're a top quality brush. I really enjoyed working with them, and they're going to be definitely in my regular rotation. And also their watercolor paper, I used the in a small pack. This is how they come. The paper comes in pads or single sheets. I think only like a 9x12 size for the pads, and then in sheets it comes in several different sizes. This one is, oh, let's see, 4 by 8.5, and it's just kind of a neat size. And you can see, I mean, the quality's good. It didn't warp and buckle. It's 140 pound, but it stayed flat when I painted on it. I didn't tape down any of these, and they were fine. The colors register true. It's a nice bright white. They're a lovely paper. So again, you know, if you are elsewhere than the United States, I mean, even if you're in the United States, it's a flat rate shipping everywhere in the world, I guess. It's just that we have more options in the United States for inexpensive art supplies. Definitely worth checking out. Micador Rains. Micador. Why do I want to check? Like, I was pronouncing it right, and then they phonetically spelled out how to pronounce it, then I started pronouncing it wrong. I don't. Micador Rains. This paper is really nice, and if it's comparable where you live to purchase this, definitely go for it. You're going to find something very comparable to other 100% cotton watercolor papers. So definitely worth the purchase. But let me warn you, this is wrapped up. I thought there was a pad of paper in here, and it wasn't. So what I did was I just kind of folded the craft paper so I could make myself a little dispenser, and then I can pull out a sheet at a time. But keep them pretty clean. So I duct taped it, you know, and stuck the label back on so I'd know what it was, and then made myself a little dispenser that way. And oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, do I have them within reach? I do. These pens, they sent me these. I was not expecting these. I wasn't expecting the paper too. That was a really nice surprise. This swatching paper is not the Micador paper. This is my Fabriano Studio paper, the 25% cotton inexpensive paper I use for all my swatches to kind of keep apples to apples when I'm doing these tests. So that's just on a cheap paper. So, I mean, cheap paper, high quality paper. It looks great on both. I'm excited to use those. I think I'll use them with some Inktober projects because they just look so good over black pen. So these pens here, I do not recall how much they are. They come in sets of 6. I've used the white, black, and gray ones quite a bit. I did use the basic color ones a little bit on that larger painting I did just for a few little highlights. I used them in the little wheat, and oh, no, I used it in a card. Let me show you the card. I think I've got it within reach. It'll be a sneaky peek because this card will not be up on my channel for a couple of weeks probably. I used it for adding just little bits of color here and there on this card. Worked great, nice and opaque. They don't say they're acrylic paint pens, so they might be like a gouache or a tempera, but I would say they're probably acrylic. That's what they seem like to me. Again, I really enjoyed them. They worked great, and yeah, I'm happy to have them. They're nice. They remind me a lot of the tips on the Posca pen, the Posca extra fine pen. Although the black gray white one has a white that's has 2 whites. One's a bolder and one's an even finer one. So that one does have a couple different tips because, you know, white pens are so useful, especially on top of really vibrant watercolors like this. I'd never heard of this brand before. I was really delighted to try these products and learn about something different and something new. And I know that my viewers from Australia often will comment that they can't get the products that I'm showing, or the prices are so crazy town in Australia. So I think that they will have some more affordable options for you to check out. These products that I am showing you today, I think they're wonderful. I can't speak for everything they have. I have used other koh-i-noor products though, like their colored pencils, and been pleased with them. So hey, definitely worth checking out. See if it's gonna match your budget, match your needs for art supplies. And oh, one other thing I wanted to try when I was swatching this out and I saw that pearl color, I was thinking, what am I going to use that for? So I tried mixing the pearl color with a few of the really vibrant colors just to see if I could make my own metallic watercolors, and swatched them out on black, and that wasn't very successful. I feel like the pearl has a lot of chalk in it or something. That's the only color that I would call chalky. I wouldn't even call the white chalky, but the pearl, I would say it's a little bit chalky. It's kind of like when you take the mica eyeshadow and you mix it with watercolors to make metallic watercolors. If you're just using the pearl mica instead of the colored ones, that's kind of the effect that you get there. Definitely will do the trick in a pinch. Like if you're making a card, like a greeting card on black cardstock, and you want to spatter some pearl colors, that will totally do the trick. But they're definitely not it's not as metallic as other metallic watercolors I've tried. But that's one color out of 36. You can't certainly judge a whole entire palette on that. But I'm very pleased with this. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I think I covered everything, and I'll leave a link to their website. I will say that from logging onto the website, not even logging on, visiting the website from the United States, it seemed a little slow, and it was difficult to search for some things. So that is the downside. I found, like, I was trying to search the watercolor paper, and it was bringing up some different things than so I had to like search just, you know, supplies for artists, and just scroll down till I found it. But I don't know if that's because maybe things have to be, you know, translated to United States dollars or something when I was browsing it, or what. But that's the only complaint I had, was just the website was a little bit clunky and slow. But the products are fantastic. If you see these in a store and you want to give them a go, why not? I think they're wonderful. They are a little on they cost a little bit more than I would have expected them to from a first glance, but after using them, I can see their worth. And just the glazing, I mean, look at that. That black line, I mean, there's like no haze except for on the white and the pearl, a little bit on the gray. I mean, it's all crystal clear. It's kind of amazing. But I definitely would classify them more as an ink, and I'll probably use them like with Inktense products or with my black fine liners. I'm just repeating myself now. So there you have it. You could have stopped this video 5 minutes ago. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoy these art reviews. And until next time, happy crafting.